Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight, the second night of Boston Cannabis Week. Tonight, we have our panel on social equity and systemic racism in the cannabis industry. I'm going to kick it over to our Director of Education just 1 minute, but just wanted to once again say thank you to our sponsors who make all of this possible. Experience Creative, Boston Hemp Company, MCR Labs, High Identity, Western Front, Elevate Northeast, Underground Culture, Hot 96.9 Boston, Berkshire Roots, Rhythm and Raps, Nis & Co., who joined us recently, and we're going to have a nice networking event with them tomorrow night. We'll tell you more about that later on. PAX, Tropfit, and VIP Pizza. So without further ado, Kara, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our panelists. Welcome for this evening. I just want to take a minute to say that I turned everything off. It's an hour and a half, and I just thought, like, we are so lucky, and I am so lucky. I am so grateful for the opportunity to continue to work with people like you and coordinate this kind of stuff with BCW and with Elevate, and it's just an honor to continue to work with all of you guys and all the panelists for this whole week. So thank you to Scott and Lisa for allowing the opportunity to come back again this year. All right, Tito, kill it.
Thank you so much. I feel like I should be dancing in a video with the car door open with what you just said. And that's a great introduction. Kara, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate the call that I received. I felt honored to be able to be part of Boston Cannabis Week. Scott and Lisa, thank you for the vision that you have, that Boston should be leading in this space, and that I have some friends in the Midwest and I have some friends on the West Coast, but like my Patriots, like my Red Sox, we want to lead in all things that are related to cannabis. And so I'm really happy to be here. My name is Tito Jackson. I am not, although there's a recording studio in this picture, I am not related to Michael Jackson. I actually am a former Boston City Councilor, and the thing that I'm most proud about as a city councilor in 2016 on happened to be April 20th. Some of you know about that holiday. I actually became the first elected official in the state of Massachusetts to back the legalization of adult use cannabis. At that time, it wasn't cool. At that time, people weren't trying to put themselves out there, in particular people in elected life. And the reason why I did that was because in 2008, in the state of Massachusetts, having an ounce or less became a ticket. But it turned out from 2008 to 2014, Black people had a 300% higher chance of being arrested just for having that ounce ounce or less that I was talking about, and a 700% higher chance of being arrested for distribution. We know that the state of Massachusetts has about 7% Black folk, and we don't smoke it all. Nor do we try to distribute it all. And so when it comes down to it, it was that disproportionality that brought me into this space. And now I'm lucky enough to be able to run my own company called Verdant Medical, which is a vertically integrated cannabis company. We grow, we manufacture, as well as retail. So very, very happy to have everyone here tonight. We have the BOMB panel. Put your seatbelts on at home, ladies and gentlemen. These folks are thebomb.com, pun intended, in the cannabis stuff. We can kind of flow in that field. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to have each person introduce themselves. We're going to start with Malik, go to Cassandra, Devin, Blake, and then end up with Jennifer. And I would like, this is probably one of your most unique introductions, I would like to know what your favorite strain is. And I also would like you to highlight an experience through the lens of equity and inclusion in the cannabis industry so far. So we're gonna start with my good friend, actually a serial entrepreneur and even a filmmaker and musician, Malik Williams. Go ahead and take it away, my brother.
Thanks so much, Tito. If you guys can hear me now, Tito, sorry about that earlier. I'm off mute.
Okay.
My name is Malik Williams. I'm originally from Dorchester, Mass. I grew up here in Boston. I'm a composer, producer, entrepreneur, educator, mentor, kind of all of the above. Really passionate about community, really passionate about this conversation. So thank you again, you know, Scott, Lisa, Kara, for inviting me on as well. So this is great. In regards to my favorite strand, you guys would be interested because I don't really have one. And I'm actually coming from a completely different angle, whereas I don't even smoke. So just putting that out there, and the reason why I think that's important is by learning what was going on in our communities. Everything that you said, Tito, of course, like those are things that I've been really concerned about. But not being a user, like I grew up, you know, hanging out and doing all the other stuff that probably shouldn't have been doing. But in my adult life, it's one of those things where I had to actually take a step back and really learn what's going on, right? On a political level, on a community level, as a parent, you know, trying to figure out what was happening. So I felt pretty fortunate that I was around other friends that recreational use is one thing, but when you talk about the business, the benefits of it, the medical benefits, things like that, that kind of opened my eyes up to a lot that was going on. And some of my friends that I knew that were trying to get into the business and some of the challenges they were having, I was using my political power, my community power, me, you know, for who I am in regards to my network, to try to really create understanding, more awareness and more understanding for myself, number one, but also for them to look at it and say like, okay, this is a business. This is something that we should, you know, we're supposed to take, have some equity in. It's not happening, right? We can look at the numbers. We can look at, you know, who's getting licenses or not, you know, those hurdles that they're jumping over. So I really got more interested and really active, just trying to figure out how to open those doors, trying to figure out how to kind of move things forward, with the understanding that I wasn't even, like, I can't say that immediately I was like, oh yeah, this is something that I agree with, right? But I can say now that as I learn more about it and, you know, responsible use and then all the other medical issues or reasons why somebody might, also as far as the community aspect and our benefit, and again, the equity, business owners, entrepreneurship, all that became like extremely important. So if we can have a liquor store in every corner, right?
Exactly.
Why shouldn't we be able to partake in this, right? So I wanted to use my voice and who I am in my network to try to push that along, to also create more awareness, but also to kind of create more of a level playing field, per se, which we know that's. So again, I'm coming from like somebody that might have been opposed the business, right? So I feel like I've learned enough to actually be on this panel and feel good about being on the panel to be able to support other entrepreneurs. So that's pretty much my history. And
awesome. Thank you so much, Malik. We really appreciate that. And again, we do need folks who come from kind of all angles on this, and having you on our side, opening the doors of opportunity and using your voice, that's absolutely critical. Cassandra, we know that Western Front is one of the first to receive designation from the state. And I know that you guys are imminent in your opening over in Chelsea. I look forward. Word on the street, there's waterfalls over there. I won't go too far into your design, but Cassandra, if you could let us know a little bit about yourself, and also just from this kind of equity and inclusion lens, how you're looking at it.
Hi, I'm Cassandra Leetz. Thank you so much for having me on this panel tonight. I'm from Long Island, New York, and I currently live in Chelsea. I'm a second generation Costa Rican American and a United States Navy veteran. I am the general manager of Western Front, the second minority owned dispensary to open in Massachusetts. And I'm proud to say that I am the first Latina woman to head a dispensary in Massachusetts. I am new to the industry, but I wanted to be on this panel tonight because I've gotten a first look at the hiring process as an economic empowerment company, and just how difficult that is based on the regulations put forth by the CCC and really what social equity means to them and what it means to Western Front and to everybody watching. If you do support minorities in cannabis, I deeply encourage you to check us out, www.westernfrontus.com, and on Facebook and Instagram, we are Western Front Chelsea. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we want to thank you for your service. And this is also a space where we want to make sure that veterans have an opportunity to participate. And we have some things at the federal level that we need to change in that regard. Again, thank you for your service. And we look forward to you opening. Devin, so between Devin and Malik, I think it's probably the reason, and Jennifer is the reason why we have unemployment rates at the level that they are, because you guys have like 4 or 5 jobs each. But Devin, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Hi, everybody. My name is Devin Alexander. I'm a lifelong resident of Quincy, Massachusetts. I'm a graduate of the first cohort of the state social equity program. I was in the entrepreneurship track. I took 14 courses over a course of 6 months. I'm the CEO of Rolling Relief. We are a delivery-only company currently going through the licensing process right now. And I'm also the vice president of the Massachusetts Cannabis Association for Delivery, also known as MCAD. Currently, right now, I also work at Ermont Incorporated, which was the 7th medical dispensary to come on. I do community outreach, and I also work as a bud tender. So I have about 40 face-to-face conversations with medical cannabis patients every day, and really just gain insight on what they want to really help them with their debilitating conditions. My favorite strain, I'm gonna get this out, is GMO. It stands for garlic, mushroom, onions. GMO is a cross between ChemDog and Girl Scout cookies. It smells like straight garlic. It has that funk to it. I'm also a huge hash rosin enthusiast. Shout out to Blake Mensing and Coyote Cannabis. Can't wait for it. And yeah. During this time last year, I put on a national expungement clinic, which Tito attended, Elevate Northeast was a sponsor, and Blake Mensing also was a panelist at that as well. And we gave individuals the tools and the resources to remove nonviolent cannabis crimes from their criminal record. And we held that in Quincy, which is very dear to me because when I was a senior in high school, I got arrested for 2 possessions of cannabis, and I had my dream of going into the Air Force derailed by that. And so I really had to think on my feet on what my next move was going to be. I had a lot of people talk down on me, you know, saying I'm never going to go anywhere, mess around with cannabis. So I worked at CVS Pharmacy as a pharmacy technician for 4 years before making my transition. And really the stuff I learned in the pharmacy helped me transition easier into what I do now in my current role, because it's really a lot of similar stuff, but we're dealing with a much better product and a much friendlier customer base. So it's much cooler than that. As far as social equity goes in Massachusetts, it's still a struggle, a fight, as you all know. You know, there's nothing new. You heard the barriers to access to capital, host community agreements, which shouldn't exist. You know, it's something we really need to work on. And, you know, we got to take it just one step at a time. You can't really try to attack everything at once. And recently, what we and what MCAD did was we got some groundbreaking changes to the current regulations. So previously, when you wanted to have a delivery company, you had to contract with an adult use dispensary, and you would have to buy everything from them at full retail price in the Massachusetts market. And everything, you get it prepackaged, and everything that you didn't sell at the end of the day, you would have to give back to that dispensary. You're basically a glorified Uber Eats. It is state-sanctioned indentured servitude with that point of view. You know, it's not a financially feasible business model. So what me and my associates did was we got a petition together. We got over 300 signatures. We got the backing of the community, which has played a big, huge role in that. But we could not have done that without the help of the community. And, you know, that very assured itself, because back on August 3rd, when we had our public testimony for the CCC, about 85% of the people who testified that day spoke on the causes that we were spoken to, which were allowing delivery companies to wholesale from product manufacturers and cultivators, and also extending the exclusivity period for which these delivery operators can do this. So when you're a delivery company in Massachusetts, you can only be social equity certified or an economic empowerment applicant, they had it originally for the first 2 years with the potential for 3. That is not a big enough window. We saw, you cannot tell how successful a company is going to be only after 2 or 3 years. So another thing that we proposed was the extended exclusivity period to 3 years with the potential for 4. And another thing was to allow the warehousing and storage of the cannabis product overnight. So those are 3 major points that we tried to push through during the public comment period. And when it came time to vote on them, all 3 points were voted 4-0 unanimously, which was very shocking to me. It's a testament of what you can accomplish through hard work and with the help of the others and believing and fighting, standing up for what you want. So that's really where we are right now. The commission is going to vote on the final regulations this Thursday on the 24th, and still it's going to take some time for that new license application to come out. So it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and I'm just happy to have the support of the community and my peers.
That's awesome. And Devin, it shows that people getting together can actually make a huge difference, and that your voice, in particular, voices that organize together can actually have massive change. And Devin, how old are you? I don't mean to get in your business, brother.
I just turned 27 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So again, someone who's under 30, changing policy at the state of Massachusetts level, and that's very, very powerful. Blake, we know about the lawyer piece, know about a bunch of other stuff, but if you can let everyone know about yourself, your practice, and also the businesses that you're involved in.
Sure. Well, thank you all for having me. I'm honored and feel privileged to be speaking on this topic. So I'm Blake Mensing. I founded the Mensing Group. I exclusively represent cannabis businesses. I'm proud to have offered a 20% discount to EE and SE since I opened my doors. I'm not aware of any other firm that does that. Truly, I want to get to a point where I can do it all for free. But that darn student loan debt and mortgages and my children and all that stuff is making that hard at the moment. But in any event, yeah, my first, I think the first strain I ever was aware of was White Widow. When I was consuming it way too young, I just said, yeah, I want a bag of weed. And that was about the depth of my understanding. So White Widow to me, I just got mesmerized by all the trichomes, and I just couldn't stop looking at it. Partly because I had smoked it. But yes, that was my first and top sort of first love of a strain, probably again, because it was the first one I actually knew the name of. So, one of the things I'm most proud of in terms of my efforts to try to make things right and undo some of the wrongs of the failed drug war is I got one of my clients the first host community agreement without a location in the state. That took 6 months of convincing. I think I'm pretty persuasive. It's kind of my job. So, I was making this entreaty to a board of selectmen, and, my background as a municipal attorney, set the stage. I'm saying, look, you're not ceding any power by allowing someone to have this location for HCA. You're in fact getting an additional opportunity to veto a location. So there's sometimes a disconnect between what's in the bylaw and what the sort of political creatures want to happen. So ultimately what got them to agree to it had nothing to do with equity. I made an impassioned plea and said, look, this is going to set a precedent. This is going to take the power away from landlords who are, serving as the true gatekeepers of who gets to put their toes in these waters. If you don't get a landlord who's willing to let them, let you use their address, you can't apply before that HCA. So I said that, point blank, and this frankly curmudgeonly old white guy, I said, this will help a lot of people. And my client wasn't even an EE or an SE. He just wanted to help people and set that precedent. That was his express goal. And this selectman just said, I don't care. I was flabbergasted. I don't know how to make people care. To me, it's just sort of, insane in light of our country's history. We're all accidentally the race we are. To hold something against someone based on something we had no role in just is such an unbelievable waste of time. And I know it's a lot of heavy lifting. And frankly, my sociology background tells me we just need a good alien invasion so humanity can band some other group. It's just sort of part of who we are. We love the tribalistic stuff, right down to the sports, color of the laundry in sports. It just gets really clouded. And, with the demonstrable failure of the drug war behind us, predicated on racial animus, you can't be in this industry and not pay attention to undoing as much as you can. You know, it boils my blood. You know, people who look like me and people who don't look like me, we consume cannabis at about the same rate. And yet, you know, the statistics that Tito went through show that the people in power of enforcing law don't seem to understand that, and they come down harder on, you know, people of color and people with less means. And yeah, it's just, it makes me sick. And I want to try to do everything in my power, limited though that may be, to try to get as many people in this industry who are owed it. They're, you know, I think it would be a moral failure if we don't get the numbers closer to what, you know, society looks like in terms of participation in this industry.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Blake. And we also appreciate the fact that, and I haven't heard of any other law firm also doing that. That's an important component, and also setting the precedent around this issue of host community agreements, which has been an obstacle for so many people. Jennifer, I want to thank you, and Jennifer's absolutely awesome. I want you to tell folks about yourself and your company and your son and a multi-generational company, all of the awesomeness that is Jennifer Gaskin.
Well, thank you. So my name is Jennifer Gaskin. I am an outreach specialist for Elevate Northeast, and I'm also the co-founder of Empress and Bandit Greenery, which, as Tito mentioned, I co-founded with my son, Louis Dennis, who is 25 years old, so a little bit younger than you, Devin. And my main goal in supporting my son in this was to try to be part of making a change and seeing some of the impact of the war on drugs be reversed through his success. Because I feel like people seeing other people that look like them be successful in certain spaces, you know, gives them the motivation to go after the same thing. So I felt like, as a 25-year-old young Black man who most people see as, I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people see as a threat. And a lot of people see as someone who, like you mentioned, Devin, as a cannabis consumer, you're not going anywhere, nothing's gonna come of your life. My son also wanted to go in the Air Force, but, you know, had other situations which, you know, ended up with him not going there. And, you know, coming from a Caribbean background, most people think Caribbean people are, you know, so much about, you know, marijuana. They know about the history in Jamaica with Rastafarians, but I'm here to tell you that most older Caribbean people do not support cannabis. And, you know, my husband, myself, my son, you know, went through that growing up as cannabis consumers and kind of looked at as from the family as being Black sheep. So me being who I am, that's also the ultimate, you know, reversal of fortune if we become successful in the cannabis space after, you know, being looked down on most of our lives for exactly that. So when we're talking about, you know, equity in the space, I know a lot of people like to throw out big pharma as the biggest enemy of cannabis. And I'll also disclose one of my other jobs is that I've worked for about 15 plus years in the pharmaceutical industry. So what I will tell you as a quote unquote industry insider is that the pharmaceutical industry is not worried about cannabis. Even in Massachusetts, where it's, you know, almost $5,000 per pound, they're not worried about that. They're worried about creating drugs that are $100,000 a pop, targeted therapies. Cannabis is not a targeted therapy and is not gonna make the pharmaceutical company the money that they want. The biggest threat to the legalized cannabis industry is overregulation, which we obviously see here in Massachusetts when we're looking at $5,000 per pound and we're looking at people paying $60+ for an eighth. Overregulation is a huge risk to the industry and to equity and to people being successful in this industry. The second one is an industry that does not right the wrongs of the war on drugs. Mm-hmm. Full stop. You know, if we are not seeing an industry that is reflective of the risk and the strife that Black and brown people have gone through to continue to cultivate this drug while it was illegal. We still have, Black people being arrested with an ounce on them because it was bagged up separately. They charge you with intent to distribute. They just arrested I think he was actually my age, 43-year-old Black man in Framingham for exactly that in the past couple of months. So if we are not writing that, then none of us can move forward in this industry. There's no reason that we should have dispensaries that look like the Apple store and around the corner, Black and brown people being arrested for the same thing. And we're gonna always have an illegal market, Black market, as long as you have $60 eighths going. And frankly, the quality of the marijuana here in Massachusetts. Exactly, Blake, exactly. So, I think that we have a lot of work to do. And capital obviously is the number one thing when we talk about our communities, is that where is the money coming from? We recently did our community meeting for our, as our prerequisite to getting our host community agreement, which I agree they should go away. And I must have had, 90% of the questions were about how much money I had and where it was coming from, which should be nobody's business. But that's what it comes down to. I'm a Black woman, grew up in Dorchester. Where is she getting her money from? Why should you care where I'm getting my money from? It's none of your business. If I was a white man, would you guys be asking me that same question? So there's a lot of, things going on in the background in this industry. It's a pay-to-play industry, and as Black and brown people, we don't have the money to play. So we need to level that playing field.
Yep. So I'm gonna, Jennifer, thank you.
I have to tell my favorite strain. Hold on.
Oh.
Pause.
Let me tap my brakes. I'm sorry about that. I got up off the break before I was supposed to. Go ahead. The mom thing just came through, but it's okay. Yeah.
Right. Because if I was next to you, I probably would have got you.
I feel like an ear got. I feel like an ear got pulled or something. Okay.
No, but my favorite strain is Jack Herer, and that's interesting because I really don't smoke sativa. Sativa makes my anxiety go through the roof. But Jack Herer, classic strain, my favorite. I will drive to get that if I see it on a menu.
That's awesome. And I actually didn't share. My favorite strain is Allen Wrench. So that's Trainwreck and NYC Diesel. So it's a sativa. I can do hours and hours worth of work with that. So let's go ahead and Jennifer, we're gonna go directly to where you started us. So the state of Massachusetts, we have this thing called the Federal Reserve Bank here. And in 2015, they did a story called The Color of Wealth. And what they looked at is, what is the median net worth of Black families, white families, Latino families? So the data is, this is not my data, this is the people who print the money. It says that white families are worth $247,500. Blake, you're buying next time we go out. And Black families have a median net worth, and I just want net worth is how much you own minus how much you owe. Black families have a median net worth of $8, and Latinx families have a range. Puerto Ricans have a median net worth of $3,020, and Dominicans have a median net worth of $0. So that's where we start. That's 2015. That's pre-COVID. So let's get it out there. This issue of how much this issue of how much it takes to get into the industry and the obstacles. Let's speak to one, what those are, and what unique issues do people of color have in obtaining the prerequisites to get open. I'm told it's about $1 million in many places to get to go with a retail facility. That could range. I live in Boston, so that I'm a little probably based on the amount per square foot here. But let's call out what does it take, and what are the obstacles that people of color, Black, Latino, and Asian folks have in getting them, versus a liquor store. We have somebody online said, hey, all you need is money to buy a liquor store. Let's call out what is the elephants that are in the room on this topic.
Well, I think you said it right there. If black people's net worth is $8, where am I getting $1 million to start a business in Canada? And if people want to use the example of liquor stores, how many Black-owned liquor stores do you know of? So if that's where we want to parallel ourselves, then you can see it right there. And alcohol has been legal for how long? And we still don't have a lot of liquor stores that are owned by Black or brown people, but we have a liquor store on every corner. So are we setting up cannabis to be the same story? I would hope not.
Yeah. Anyone else want to jump in?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Blake, and then we'll grab you, Cassandra.
So of course, as an attorney, I think about the laws first. So the one thing that makes it really hard is something that I believe you mentioned, Jennifer, the overregulation. The reason it costs that much money is because the commission's regulations give nod to, disproven or easily disprovable misstatements and misconceptions. So all the security regulations, completely nonsensical. This plant can't physically kill anyone. The security requirements are over the top and above and beyond what pharmacies or banks even have to do. So they're protecting us based on federal lies. So that means, you're spending 50, 100 grand easy just to get security. And, the requirements, they go line by line, even to specifying the, resolution of your camera, redundant alarm systems, all these things for a product that itself is not inherently dangerous. So that is the first thing. The other thing is, because of the federal prohibition, you can't go get a small business administration loan. You can't get a commercial bank loan from any bank that has a presence anywhere in any other state. So that is, a double whammy of it's costing more than it should because the commission is placating prohibitionists who, I don't care what your political stripes are. If you're wrong, and they are demonstrably wrong. So you're treating this like it's uranium or plutonium, and it's not that. And that makes everything else way more expensive. One thing that I've experienced, in negotiating a ton of leases here is, the word cannabis comes up. I had one client looking for a spot in Somerville. It was a nice old Verizon store or something like that. 4,000 square feet, a little big for retail in my opinion. But yeah, it was listed at $42 a square foot. The word cannabis came up, the guy said 75. And we said, no, that's extortion. So, there's just this myth that everyone in cannabis is either already super rich or that it's an instant gratification kind of get rich quick scheme. It's not true, especially because of the tax treatment. So those are the sort of the lens I see as some of the major barriers.
Cassandra, you want to get into that?
Yeah, so Western Front, like I stated, is an economic empowerment company, and in order to maintain that status, we need to be a majority owned company. So going back to that study, The Color of Wealth in Boston, as a minority owned company, we are basically fundraising from ourselves. And then that ends up getting a lot of different people in the game, constantly making sure that we are over that 51%. On top of that, all of the people that we need to hire, like zoning specialists, lawyers, everyone that needs to get involved, it's just a staggering amount of money. And then on top of that, especially during COVID has decimated the middle class, making fundraising just that much more difficult. And it's very difficult to get in the game and then to stay in the game, especially now that COVID has, pushed our opening back quite a few months, and we're still paying our rent. We're still, we're still trying to fundraise during a pandemic. We still need to pay specialists. And even the minor things, they all add up, even just paying landscaping. It's an incredible amount of money. And I just think the structures that are in place prevent us from doing that.
That's Devin, Malik, you guys want to jump in, or I got a couple of more questions, but do you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, just some quick tidbits. 8% net worth income. One of the first steps in fundraising is you go to your friends and family. And if your friends and family are all in the same bucket, then that's where the predators come in to this game with these predatory loans. You see a lot, and they want to do these unfair circumstances. So people just have to be aware that there's snakes out there, and not everybody's going to have your best interest at heart. So you just have to stay woke, as the kids.
No, that's definitely, as noted, the lack of it's crazy. You could have $2 million in the bank, but if you wanted to borrow $100,000 from that same bank, they're not actually going to give you a loan. And we know that there's some things at the federal level that are being talked about in that space, but to date, there's no changes in that space. I did want to also jump into kind of another space relative to some of the unique things that happen with people of color when it comes to host community agreements, right? So Blake, you kind of talked about, so for folks who don't know, in the state of Massachusetts, we are a home rule state. What does that mean? That means that the cities, and like when we talk about town meeting, that means like real town meeting. The whole town goes to the meeting a couple times a year, kind of Quaker style. There's some brownies and some cookies and some apple cider and all that good stuff. So everybody's there. So this actually means at the state of Massachusetts level, unlike Illinois, you actually in Illinois, you get a license from the state of Illinois first, and then you would go to Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, Quincy, and then you would actually already have that license in hand and then be able to negotiate at the local level. In the state of Massachusetts, well, it's the opposite. So you have to go to each city and town that you want a store, for instance. So you can only have 3 stores. So you would have to go to each city or town and negotiate what we refer to as a host community agreement, which technically is supposed to be a maximum of 3% of your gross right off the top. My question for you is, what has been your experience? And I want to, this question comes from Michael Ortal, who's watching. What unique experiences have you heard, seen, or experienced relative to host community agreements for people of color? And I know, many of you have dealt with that, and Cassandra, in your case, you're dealing with that, right now. What's been happening relative host community agreements as a whole, but in particular, what unique obstacles have been in place for people of color in this space?
Well, I think you forgot the pitchforks, because the pitchforks come out too at these community meetings.
That is true. There's some sharp pitchforks. You're right. There are some pitchforks. I did forget that part, Jennifer.
But I mean, I think for us, my experience was that the questions were less about cannabis and more about who we were and why we wanted to be there and how we got there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like I said, my son is 25. The other members of our team are, probably the oldest person is in their early 30s on the team. So for me, I was thankful to be there as the elder of the group and be able to respond to those questions, because I feel like, it probably would have been worse if it was just the men and my son, because I feel like they would have probably gotten attacked much worse than I did, as a Black, woman who's a mom and whatever.
Yeah. Anybody else? Is it Malik? Do you want to pop in? Pop off mute.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to kind of second what Jennifer just said, my experience initially, not really knowing anything, much about the industry, but being a community person, I actually went to a few different community meetings, in Mattapan, Dorchester, different places. As that person that I wanted to support the business as I started learning more about it. I was contemplating getting into the business myself. But what I saw at the community meetings were brutal. Like the pitchfork thing is like real. Like, here I am in the corner. And again, I grew up in the community as well, right? But here I am on the other side, right? So I was going to get a pitchfork myself, but it was kind of interesting because what I didn't see going on, even for different politicians that were there, right? I didn't see anyone really taking the lead on it, right? From a political standpoint, to be able to really kind of moderate what was going on in the room. It was like, this person wants to bring this substance into our community. And these people, you know, you get some people that are like, yeah, right? Because they do want it because of whatever reasons. But then you get some of the older people in particular, right? And everyone could have their particular reason why they might disagree. But the narrative that gets, and it's the conversation and the education and the follow-up doesn't happen, right? So I was looking at that political person in front of the room that I kind of knew and saying, yo, like, why aren't you saying, you know, because I know that you have the power to say, okay, you know something, we might not agree on this right now. These are the things that are pros, like the pros and the cons. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of happens. The people up front get attacked. The people in the neighborhood feel like, oh, hell no, you're not coming into here with this. There's no understanding, there's no education, there's no nothing. And so pretty much everybody's bad. And so that's the stigma that's behind the whole thing. So again, this is me on the outside looking in. And that's the thing there where I was like, no, wait, well, this is happening outside of our communities, right? Why is it that it's happening over in those more affluent towns, right? Where they're used to being, they have the equity and, you know, the finances and everything else. But how come it's not happening within our communities that those, you know, politicians in particular, you know, I even had some Boston police officers and people that I knew that I had private conversations with to say, hey, this is what's going on in this neighborhood, to get their opinion and get their advice as well. But again, there was no follow-up. So whatever that, there's a huge disconnect. What needs to be happening, it's like being on this panel right now where you have a moderator in a way. You know, you're not taking sides on anything, but basically you can kind of facilitate some type of understanding within the audience. And that's the part there that I think that we got to really focus on as well.
I'm right there with you, Malik. I think one of the critical components is for people to understand the process. This was passed in 2016, right? It's 2020 right now. This genie's not going back in the bottle. Cassandra is probably opening in the next week. So there's some stuff that's happening. It's not going back in the bottle. So I think one of the things, and I've done, I went and met with Mass Senior Action. So they asked me to come. They invited me. It was and I got there and was at a church. So I'm like, hold on, y'all have me speaking about weed in the basement of a church? Does the pastor know that I'm going to be, speaking? Long story short, they were all elders, but what ended up happening is that by the end of the meeting, they understood the question was, it was coming, but who was going to be allowed to have one? Was it going to be people from California, Oregon, or Colorado? Or somebody who's your neighbor who's going to hire people from your neighborhood and community and make sure that people who got locked up don't get locked out of this space. So Devin, did you have a piece on this HCA?
Yeah, definitely get your HCA first before you do the community outreach meeting. That way people can't say too much. And definitely when you do your community outreach meeting, buddy up to the local city councilors. They will act as your third-party liaison that keeps the peace between the community and yourself. But like I said before, these host community agreements should not exist. There is no oversight in them, and they are ripe for extortion. And if you do not know, it has happened already in Fall River, who the mayor was the same age as me, 27-year-old, extorting cannabis companies for hundreds of thousands of dollars and even pounds of smokable flower to obtain these host community agreements. He got arrested by the feds. He is out of power, and now these HCAs are under a more scrutinized microscope. Some of these towns, these cities, these municipalities, they put a cap on how many HCAs they're handing out. You know, so if you arrived onto the scene too late, you're gonna have to find another place to set up shop. And same thing with retail locations as well. Just take, for instance, the town of Marshfield. They have a cap of only 2 retail locations. You can't set up, if you don't get in there first, you can't set up in Marshfield. It's like that for a lot of towns on the South Shore. Abington, Quincy, where I live, and pretty much the list goes on, you know. So I know there was legislation earlier on in the year that would give the Cannabis Control Commission more oversight of these host community agreements, and that is most definitely needed because you don't want to see people with political connections getting in more ahead of equity applicants. You know, some of these HCAs should be reserved for equity applicants. You see people with political ties that are connected, former counselors, former law-abiding, former lawyers, all that stuff. And it's not a fair process, you know. I wanted to set up my location in the city of Brockton. Brockton's capped out. They handed out all their HCAs. I have to go somewhere else, you know. So it's really struggle, you know. And you see other states like Oklahoma, they don't have these HCAs, and they don't give municipalities the option to opt in or opt out of having these establishments in their cities and towns. So that's why the Oklahoma cannabis industry is flourishing, because it is much more attainable. If you lived in Oklahoma for the past 2 years and you have a pulse and $2,500, you can get a license out there. So yeah, host community agreements need to go. Point blank, simple. They're a huge barrier besides access to capital.
I've got to speak on this. This is something I feel incredibly strongly about because I used to be a municipal attorney. So I've negotiated host community agreements for towns in other contexts. The simple truth is towns know that every applicant needs an HCA. There is no concomitant obligation on a town to have any guidelines put in place by the state about how they pick winners and losers. So you can have the best team, the best business plan, the most money in the world. If the town doesn't like you for whatever reason, you cannot move forward. There was a case in the city of Salem, a former client of mine sued after they weren't granted an HCA. There was this review committee. They set up the rubric of how they're going to grade people. In the memo where it said that this group wasn't worthy, in the body of it, they said they have good capitalization and a lot of cannabis experience from being cultivators up in Maine. In the paragraph where they said they weren't worthy, they said the exact opposite. Now, in administrative law, there's a concept called arbitrary and capricious. If you say one thing and then say the exact opposite in the same document and can't maintain that logical consistency, that's textbook arbitrary and capriciousness. What the judge said was, well, it was an advisory opinion from this committee. The city council didn't have to accept that, ignoring how those committees function. Like, tell me how many times people have taken a committee's recommendation and said, nah, we don't like it. So it's a structural impediment, to getting your foot in the door to even hit submit to the state. So I think this honestly is perpetrated by the Massachusetts Municipal Association and the largest municipal law firm in the state, KP Law. They have agreed that that statute is super dense and complex. It says things like shall and numbers. It's not dense text. It's very plain. So, people are saying, 3% or hit the road, ignoring the up to 3% language, ignoring the language that every cost incurred has to be reasonably related to the facility. And then the town has to produce a receipt. That receipt then becomes a public record. So frankly, the commission's guidance says to municipalities that you can charge for anticipated costs. What I want to know is, how do you produce a receipt for a cost that never materializes? And think about things that people anticipate will happen. What about all the overdose deaths from cannabis? You can charge a company of that under the commission's guidance. That's not biologically accurate. So it is so wrong that you need a piece of paper from the locals to get your state license, application in the queue. It is backwards. It is, systemic, institutionalized extortion. It grinds my gears to no end. I've had attorneys say to me, if you put one red line on this piece of paper, we're not going to sign it. That's not an arm's length negotiation. So, when you inject other things where, typically old white people are saying, oh, who's going to come to our town? I can't imagine what, magical goalpost moving they'll do if there's a person in color in front of them. I did, however, have a great experience. My client in Blandford, which is way out Western Mass, they were welcomed to town. It's majority minority owned. Their company is going to be called Rappers Only. So they're going to try to get, celebrity rappers involved, and they thanked them for coming to town. So there are towns out there that, can see past what someone looks like and say, hey, you got a good plan. And, they got their HCA. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
No, but
Yeah.
I think that's critical. And I think to your point around the towns that are able to run up the score. I have a host community agreement that I received from the town of Rowley, and they were able to get, we were able to get our HCA in three weeks, right? So What does that mean? That means a lot about a hold fee, which most folks are paying on a monthly basis to hold their property that they don't really get to go in. They just kind of like get to visit it and drive by and say hi to it. And so you're dealing with that on a monthly basis. And when people don't make decisions or drag it out for you, it costs tens of thousands of dollars. And really people are in situations where you paying your house note or you paying for the store that you hope to have someday. So I think this host community agreement piece is a critical component. I want to get into so those are some of the obstacles. So people know once more in the state of Massachusetts, the first thing that you have to receive to be able to move forward towards the state process is you need to receive a host community agreement with the individual municipality, the city or town, and then you take that host community agreement and get the first thing you can receive at the state level is a provisional license. I guess for me, my question is, and if with the folks on this stage, if you had a magic wand, budgets weren't an issue or the like, what are the 2 or 3 things that you would fix relative to getting to open for people of color or even individually as yourself? What are the, when we're looking at the biggest roadblocks, and I know we've heard some here, if you had a magic wand, what are the 2 or 3 things that you would fix?
Tito, I would like to start with areas of disproportionate impact, also known as DI. I think I've said the acronym DI maybe hundreds of times in the last couple of weeks in regards to our hiring process. So as an economic empowerment company, we are required to recruit 51% individuals from areas of disproportionate impact. And these areas are based primarily on a weird combination of marijuana arrest rates and unemployment levels. And so there's 29 cities. Boston is one of them. And Boston itself is subdivided into census tracts. So, and surprisingly, major towns are left out, for instance, Lawrence, Everett, areas of East Cambridge. So so what does this mean for a Boston area economic empowerment dispensary? It means that we are zeroing in on, of course, we're zeroing in on Chelsea because we are in Chelsea and we want to hire Chelsea residents, but we are zeroing in on Chelsea, Revere, Lynn, and constantly using census data to verify if applicants are in the right micro neighborhoods within Roxbury or Dorchester. And so applicants who by all other means live in the hood, they don't count towards our percentage requirements. Applicants who have arrest records, applicants that we recruit from programs like ROCA, but they live in East Cambridge or Everett, they don't count. And so we are basically forced to choose between applicants based on where they live in Roxbury, instead of judging, the whole person. And instead, it sort of feels like another form of discrimination in the end, when that is exactly what we're trying to change. For instance, we have an applicant who literally lived on the wrong side of the road in an arbitrary census tract in Roxbury. And so my question is, why are economic empowerment applicants who are already disadvantaged in the many ways that we've already discussed, why are we the only ones forced to play by these rules? Why is NETA not have to, why shouldn't they also have to recruit 51% individuals from these disproportionate areas? The government doesn't legally have to force us to hire our own people. We were always going to do that. And as of today, Western Front, our staff is 87% diverse, yet we're at the brink of failing our eligibility requirements as an economic empowerment company because we just can't find these applicants in these right little streets. There really are pockets, and it happens to us on a daily basis where I find someone, great interview, and then I'll go and type in their address and pull up the zip code, and oops, they live 2 blocks away and you don't fit into our 51%. And it just leads into, you know, it just defeats the whole purpose in the first place. And we propose that candidates are evaluated for suitability based on their whole person on a case-by-case basis, not which street in Dorchester they live, or not which year they used poor judgment and committed a crime. And that is another thing I would like to quickly discuss. There are a bunch of tables in the regs that have these very arbitrary rules for who counts and who doesn't, who's disqualified as a suitable agent for marijuana and who isn't. And for instance, we had a candidate who was upfront and honest about an incarceration that they had in 2011, but because they were only released 3 years ago, they aren't eligible until 2022. So essentially putting this person in 60 months of an invisible prison where they remain unemployable.
Which is exactly what we don't want. And we want to make sure that those individuals who are locked up don't get locked out of the industry. And in fact, you know, and to be very honest, those are the individuals who should be at the front of the line rather than the back of the line.
And that's who we want. And we fight for these candidates, and we'll put in applicants anyway in the hopes that maybe, you know, something will change. But I personally just think it's arbitrary, and that the CCC should be evaluating on a candidate's, you know, whole person and based on our recommendation as well. If we find, trust us to decide who should be employed by our company.
Yep. And I think you also bring up, Cassandra, as a business owner, you guys have a lot of skin in the game about how somebody does, right? So that's another piece.
So if we want to take that chance, let us take that chance. Don't block this individual out because they have another 24 months until they're, you know, allowed to apply for agency.
And if anyone wants to jump into this, I would also note that one of the things that Jennifer noted earlier, every single person who has a marijuana offense on their record in the state of Massachusetts, considering that we sold over $400 million worth of this product last year, everybody should have their record this one time scratched,
expunged. It should be
straight up. And we obviously, and shout out to Devin and also Elevate for the work that they've done with National Expungement Week, Beth, Tashonda, Kara, all those pieces. And we're going to get to what people can do. But Magic Wand is out there. Jennifer, Blake.
I mean, the magic. I actually want to comment on what Cassandra said, and you're 100% on point. I currently reside in the city of Worcester. My zip code actually does not appear on that list, but I can honestly say that, okay, yes, I probably do live in a middle-class neighborhood, but I can honestly say that 3 people have been shot in like houses close to me in the 10 years that my husband and I have owned this house. So you can't tell me that there's no violence or there's no, you know, arrests or issues in my area when literally I could walk down the street and be shot, essentially. So I agree with you. And I think that they should put the onus on us as business owners to make those decisions whether or not we want to hire people. It should not be up to the state to tell us who we want to trust or entrust with our business interests, because we're the ones with the money on the line. The other point that I want to make, and I think I've made this point a couple of times in different panels, is that, you know, like you said, there's this chart and it says, okay, if you have this offense or that offense, you can or you can't, you know, be involved in cannabis or whatever. But I'm sorry, but I grew up, you know, in Dorchester in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. The guys that I knew, or guys and women that I knew that were successful in the drug game, most likely have violent arrests, or at least have firearm charges or something if they got stopped with, you know, whatever on them. So we need to really look at, you know, who are we saying can't be involved in the industry? And we have to look at, like, if my husband he was incarcerated at the age of 18 and 19. Are you telling me he's supposed to still be penalized by that at 43 years old after you incarcerated him and quote unquote rehabilitated him? I think we really need to look at who was really disproportionately impacted and who do we really need to give assistance to get into the industry and have get something back from this industry that they gave up a lot for.
Absolutely, absolutely.
If I may, if I had a magic wand, the first thing I would do, the state application process, it's, you know, a couple hundred pages worth of saying in essence what the regulations say. I think it makes 0 sense to, you know, deem someone worthy of entry in the industry on the backs of their SOPs that they probably didn't write. Everyone will say they'll follow the rules. What on earth is gained by having you regurgitate the regulations? And yes, I'm sort of talking myself out of a job here, but
yeah, Blake, you're about to lose a lot of money on this one, but go ahead.
It just makes no sense. The cheeky part of me has toyed with the idea of just taking the regulations and writing, we're going to do all of this as our SOPs. There's nothing added by having you, again, repeat what the regulations say. So that goes back to the overregulation. The other thing I would do, even with a magic wand, I would say getting rid of the HCA would be virtually impossible. So what I would do instead is make a community impact fee only apply to non-equity applicants, non-social equity, non-economic empowerment. Why are they paying for these imagined impacts when the state was the entity that was doing the disproportionate enforcement, whether it was local police, state police, or through the legislation? We're picking up the tab for what the state did wrong. The receipts are there. They were the ones demonizing people based on the way they looked for the same usage rates as people who look like me. So, you know, I'm all for the industry, you know, paying their way, but, you know, tax dollars should be earmarked to towns that set up structures to prioritize economic empowerment applicants, social equity applicants. They should reopen the economic empowerment qualification period. The fact that it was a 2-week window, not advertised, is ludicrous. Again, this is you qualified by virtue of things that are inherent to you as a human being. That doesn't go away after those 2 weeks in April of 2018. So that's maybe a couple magic wands. But anyway, that's what I would do.
Devin, you want to grab the magic wand? I feel like this is a rap cipher. It could be the magic wand or a microphone, but go ahead and grab the magic wand.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to touch slightly on what Cassandra said and agree with the whole disproportionate impacted areas. The town of Braintree is listed and Lawrence isn't on there. That's all I'm going to say. That's pretty absurd to me if you haven't been to Braintree. If Blake was right, the whole screening agreements, those aren't going to go away. So what we really need is access to no interest loans, which is something we also tried to pass earlier in the legislature. Massachusetts is the first state with a statewide social equity program. That's something that the commissioner hangs their hat on. They always have to put that out there. But they don't have access to no interest loans like Illinois and like California does, you know. So Tito said it, we made over $400 million in cannabis sales. Where's that money going to? I don't have access to interest loans. I drive down the street, there's still potholes all over the place. It's just sitting in a rainy day fund, just waiting for something to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, that's key. Just to drill down on Illinois, so people know. I actually, a young man named Shayun from Elevate, he hosted something out a kind of learning expedition out there, and in Illinois they put $30 million up front for equity candidates to have the resources to actually get. This is before they opened up the floodgates for people to even open. So they actually made a preemptive allowance for folks to deal with the fact that we know it's going to cost a lot of money to get into this industry. And as you talked about, Devin, a revolving loan fund, when we think of Grameen Bank and the things like, when we know we're connected to each other, those dollars go back in and we could actually all do better. In the meantime, also, it would be nice for there to be a fund at the state level for all of those folks who said that they want to take 1% and that are open now and put it into that fund, which could also help. Malik, did you have any And any magic wand input on this one? Okay, so I got you. What was that?
Nothing to add that wasn't said already. So.
Okay, I appreciate that. So let's also get into we are not helpless, and I don't want folks to ever think, and we need to go back to how did cannabis pass in the state of Massachusetts? Understand, this didn't pass as legislation in the House nor Senate. This actually passed because the power was in the people. And this was a ballot question organized by people to get onto the ballot and to pass. And everybody now is like, oh, it's cool, it was fine. That wasn't, I can't say everybody, but that was not the case in 2016. So I guess one of the other questions I have is, what can individuals, groups of people, organizations, what can people do, and those in the audience, what can they do to create change in a real and sustainable way in the cannabis industry? And I want to start with Devin on this one, because you just moved mountains. It was you parted the Red Sea. You did a bunch of stuff. There's a whole bunch of analogies that go along with what you did. And interestingly, one of the things that you said was that I didn't think I was going to be successful. Like it was like, but you and your group moved and changed not a little bit of policy, but a whole lot of policy for a whole lot of people. So let's talk about, because we are not helpless, what can individuals do, organizations do, how do folks make a change in the cannabis industry?
Well, the first step is to become informed and educated, and attending events like this is definitely a big, huge first step to really know the local laws and regulations going on in the communities. Most of the municipalities are unaware of economic empowerment status, social equity people. And just be kind. Just be kind to one another. And there's no room. There's a lot of nastiness going on in the world right now. There's no need to add to it. So that's all. You just be kind and lend a helping hand and just believe in each other. I had a lot of people say it was a pipe dream for the changes that we wanted to do. Give up, kid. It's not going to happen. Commission will never allow that, But with the power of unity and the power of the community, we made our voice heard. And it's just being a lot of awareness. We did a lot of public speaking leading up to that, so that was something that I really made a priority. Was any podcast, any interview, any panel, I was going to take the opportunity to just get the word out and just do it. And it helps. It's helped a lot, and it's really just still a surreal feeling just to see if you put your mind to something, you can really get the results you want.
That's awesome. Do other folks have actual action steps that people can employ in making a real change in the industry?
Yes, I would like to call out on dispensaries to start hiring Blacks, Latinx, LGBTQ, and veterans. If you look at active agents based on CCC open data, 74% of active agents are white. Basically, this just shows an unconscious bias towards what we can do. What I think we need to start really considering transferable skills. I just don't think that people believe that we are able to do these jobs. No, we don't have experience. But one of the things I encountered over and over again interviewing mostly a lot of young Latino men in Chelsea was that they apply to 4 or 5 dispensaries and they don't get anything, they don't hear back from these people. So what is going on? Why aren't you hiring them? What is, you know what I mean? Why do you believe that a white man is more capable of handling inventory than a Black man? And I really just think it boils down to that. And I'm calling out all dispensaries to start hiring us.
And you heard it here first, Cassandra, with the call out that, there are, Cassandra, you're not open yet. So that 74% number are the pre-existing dispensaries. There's only Kobe and Kevin Hart down at Pure Oasis. So we have one Black-owned the dispensary in the city of Boston. the call out is out there for these larger companies and all of you that are out there to be thoughtful about who you're hiring and making sure that, as Cassandra, and I want to drill down on the transferable skills. Blake is a lawyer. If he goes to another law firm, they would say, hey, you were a lawyer before, we'll hire you because you're a lawyer and you had some experience here. Interestingly, the people who have the most transferable skills are people who sold quote unquote drugs on the quote unquote illegitimate market. That is a transferable skill. And in fact, that individual didn't actually have the same barriers that are up here. So they actually have transferable skills. And if we're talking about stopping violence in our communities, and if we're talking about stopping things in the illicit marketplace, if I'm telling you not to do it on the block, what opportunity am I doing? Am I giving you to work at the Western Front or to work at Rolling Leaf? That's the real piece if we're talking about people being able to be in the mix. So question, that question, remains out there. Malik, you got involved as an individual. You're, like I said, you got about 20 jobs. But what can individuals, people who are community members, leaders in our communities and neighborhoods, what can people do?
And I think, this industry is no different from any other industry, right? So I'm actually, as a composer and a producer, I'm on the media space, right? The advertising space and all that. So if you look at that industry itself, it pretty much is suffering, from the same conditions, right? Of not, our access in our barriers, to entry potentially could be that education, right? So in this case, I think you make a strong point. Being a city person, right? Understanding that the people that have the most experience, right? The quote unquote, if you say a drug dealer or whatever, a lot of those people are extremely brilliant, right? And that doesn't get considered, right? So when you think about that, you think about someone that, was selling an illegal substance or whatever, and you kind of put them all in one, bubble or bucket or whatever. But in my experience from people that I know like that, their minds and their brain and their ability to adapt and learn from an industry level is a huge asset, I think. So I would say for any decision makers or anyone that actually is able to, hire, or from a political level, things like that, you have to kind of do things on purpose for that purpose. And you literally have to look at what's going on. And, the same thing as Cassandra said, it's like, listen, that this is going on. So either you care or you don't care. If you do care, you actually have to say, something, I'm going to do this because this is necessary, right? We're never going to be able to break that barrier if somebody doesn't do that. And that's kind of across the board with every industry. Technology, education in general, politics, in politics, we have to vote. We need our community to actually vote for the people that are going to go and push these initiatives. And the same thing with this industry is no really different. Business is business. And it's just a matter of who's willing to make that change, who's willing to put themselves out there to make that decision, regardless of what it looks like. Because you're going to have a crowd of people that say, oh, no, that's not fair. What about me? Right? When it comes to, white privilege issues and all the rest of that stuff, right? The reality is someone has to. It's almost like Scott and Lisa doing this panel right now, right? We had conversations about this. We had really, healthy conversations, I think. And just this opportunity of this panel going on now. Last year, I played golf, for their BCW tournament that they did. And that was another thing. It was like, oh, I thought I was going to play golf, but I actually learned a lot, and I was around a lot of other people, right, with different perspectives and things like that. So I kind of left. And again, following up to my conversations, with them about what's going on right now. I just think it's hugely important for the people that do understand and the ones that do get it to actually take action and do what they know is the right thing to do. It's pretty simple, So
that's absolutely the case. Blake, Jennifer, you want to pop in?
Just echoing what Devin and Malik said, coming armed with information to tell people, what you think is correct, I think is hard for a lot of people to do. There's this sort of, aura of authority around elected officials or politicians that make some people nervous to speak to them. basically growing up, my mom would say within earshot that she hated shy people. So I never had a chance to be shy my whole life. I said, I can't have my mom hating me. So just realizing the people in power, you know, they're people. There's no, you know, mystique. They have been granted, you know, a limited power by the people, you know, through democracy. So, you know, whether that means you run for your local town board when you never would have thought about it or never heard of it, you know, I think that's important to get representation. You know, being able to articulate why a policy like the delivery-only retail was ridiculous on its face. It was a glorified courier license, like Devin said. That makes no sense when the goal was to lower the barriers of entry. You can get in easily, but you're going to fail really quickly if you're handcuffed to a brick and mortar retail. So just having the courage, you know, people will say negative things about any idea you might have just because we're in this sort of keyboard warrior culture where you can say whatever you want behind a keyboard and it doesn't affect you directly immediately. I'll say the same thing, you know, to someone's face as I would, you know, behind a keyboard. And that's not just because I'm, you know, 6'2", 225, but I'm just not as scared of anyone because I say things that I've read about. So arm yourself with facts and realize that policy might seem like it's forever and it's just not. You can change people's mind basically by just being correct. And there's ways to disagree on certain points, but you know, when you have the information under at your disposal, you can change laws, you can change minds, and that's desperately needed in this industry.
Exactly. And Blake, I'm 6'2", 270, so I'm right there with you. I'll say it to your face. Also. But
I'm
think,
only 5'6", and
okay.
But I'm gonna still say what I want to say.
I know you'll say it to my face. I understand. So, what are you thinking, Jennifer?
No, I mean, just speaking to that, you know, getting the right candidates and getting diverse candidates. So I was on a panel last year, and I won't say what panel or who the dispensary owner was, but he essentially made a comment along the lines of, number one, he said to me, well, he doesn't know what my qualifications would be, number one. Number two, he said that the applicants come in dressed like drug dealers. As he stared my husband, who was in the front row, in the face. Because I guess in his mind, he was dressed like a drug dealer. But when you are coming at it from that perspective, with already those kind of biases, how do you even get to the point where you're going to hire anybody with any kind of diverse background when you are already judging people by how they look, how they dress? You didn't even get to the qualifications, and you're next to me on a panel, so I must know a little bit of something because I'm on the panel with you, and you're questioning my qualifications because of how I look. So, you know, when those things happen, we as a community need to speak out and correct people when they make those kind of comments, which I did. I told him he actually looked more like a drug dealer to me because all the drug dealers that I've seen, like in Scarface and in New Jack City, wore Italian suits, not Jordans and Champion hoodies. So you have to take people to task. And I think that comes with education, right? So you need to be informed in what you're saying, and then you're not ever going to be worried about or afraid, as Blake said, about speaking it, because it's truth, it's fact. So you need to be an informed person, and you shouldn't be afraid to go to, you know, the CCC hearings and get up and talk. Or if you don't want to get up and talk, then you write a response to what they're saying. And, you know, number 3, isn't it? It's National Voter Registration Day. Register to vote, and understand what the candidates stand for, right? So you can't, you know, if we all are saying we want an equitable industry, we want to end, you know, systemic racism, you know, in our community, in our society, then you need to know who these people are that you're voting for. What is their history? I don't want to hear today that you're posting up Black Lives Matter. I want to know how you voted on police reform before I put my vote for you. So I think, you know, education, and don't be afraid to talk.
And this issue around systemic racism is absolutely critical, and that means you have to participate in the quote unquote system. We live in a state where we spend $60,000 a year locking people up. Now, mind you, the kids that go to the Boston public schools, we spend $20,000 a year on them, right? So that tells you about our values here, that we are more willing to incarcerate individuals than give them the opportunity that you were just talking about, Jennifer. Let's also drill down on that issue of voting. Don't only vote every 4 years, right? Because the presidential election matters, but understand every 2 years there is an election for state representative and state senator, as well as in cities, city councilors. Why does that matter? Because although the people in the White House, especially the folks right now, I digress, I'm not going to go there, but those folks have some effect on what we're doing, but the direct effect on the laws of the state of Massachusetts happen in the state house of the state of Massachusetts with our state reps, as well as our state senators. And I would say to you, if you don't see someone who you agree with, then you need to go look in the mirror and step forward. And we have situations like Devin, who he didn't have to wait till he had a quote unquote title to change actual policy. He got folks together, he organized people. So, you know, the rich folks they organize money and then they organize people. Devin has friends, so he can actually get people together. And that actually made a huge difference in what was going on. So guys, we're coasting to a nice end to an amazing panel. I wanted to give folks an opportunity to have any last words about what people think we could better do to address the systemic issues around racism in the cannabis industry. We can kind of start with closings. Devin, you want to go ahead and close out with anything that you'd like to, any other knowledge that you would like to impart?
Yeah, definitely. Just real quick, I want to give a shout out to all the members of MCAD, Christopher Fevry, Janelle Goins, Aaron Goins, Morris Partee, and then also shout out to Grant Smith for helping us in our goals. Grant Smith's a dynamite person. He's a really valuable asset to the community. And as far as what you can do to help support Black businesses, that's what you need to do. Support Black businesses every day, not just because an unarmed African-American got killed by a police officer, and that's not just showing face, like Jennifer said. You gotta do it, you gotta live that. Walk it, get it how you live. That's how it is, you know what I'm saying? You walk that walk, you gotta talk that talk, you gotta walk that walk.
That's what's up. Jennifer?
I gotta figure out how to unmute myself. Yeah, so I want to definitely shout out my son, Louis. He's the reason that I'm here, so shout out to my son. Shout out to my husband, who is the lifelong king of cannabis. And, you know, the entire Empress and Bandit team, as well as Elevate Northeast. I appreciate you guys, you know, having me here on the panel. Giving voice to Black voices, because, you know, we need to amplify Black and brown voices in order to make change. 100% agree with you, Tito. You need to vote every time. I don't care if the vote is about whether or not to have peanut butter and jelly in the school system. You need to vote. So educate yourself, vote, and speak out for those people who cannot speak for themselves.
Blake?
Well, yeah, I feel honored. You know, obviously I couldn't be a whiter person, so to have my voice heard here in this context means a lot to me. You know, again, it's an accident the way we look, and I think, you know, I've done what I can in the small sphere of influence I have to try to do my best to make things right. I think what you have to do is learn and try to empathize with people. You know, everyone has struggles. People have different struggles, and I think there's a lot of stuff that's structurally wrong based on, you know, people who look like me being really dead set on holding power. My goal, hopefully, is when I'm an old white guy, I would like fewer old white guys to be in power. The final thing I would just say is I look like a drug dealer because I was one. So there you go.
That's what's up. Okay. Malik, and then we'll close out with Cassandra.
I'd like to see far less old white guys like Blake and Tara too. Blake, thank you so much. No, I honestly, I think like I'm always inspired by the diversity of, you know, all of us, like just in our communities. You know, thanks so much for having me on this panel. Thanks, Tito, for doing an amazing job, you know, moderating and everything else. I have to say, like, I wasn't quite sure where the conversation would potentially go. But I'm really, like, I learned a lot once again, you know, just from hearing all you guys' perspective. And I want to try to make myself available as well for anything that you guys are working on, just so we can try to collaborate just in the future, you know, connect and everything else. I think, you know, same thing with voting. You have to vote, you have to be present, you have to use your voice. And that's going to be a big deal moving forward, you know. And I think when it comes to systematic racism and these issues, a lot of people just don't understand what that is, you know. And I think that we actually have to be able to have these uncomfortable conversations with a lot of people just to, you know, really educate folks. Because it's people that really do want to help and really do want to be alliances and push things forward. And then there's clearly people that do not. So we have to just be strong and stand up, you know, to those principles and our principles to make things happen. So, but thanks again. I appreciate being on with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I would ask you to play us out with the Prince, but I'm not going to go there tonight. But and by the way,
I'm not
everybody, so all of that stuff in the background, Malik actually knows how to use. That's not just play stuff.
Oh, and if you guys haven't seen our movie, This Ain't Normal, Tito, did you get a chance to check out?
Not seen it yet. Oh.
So I think so. This is about a lot of our culture, the gang culture in Boston. What we're trying to do is humanize our experience. So it's really all about this conversation that we're having. But it's released out on streaming platforms now. This Ain't Normal. You guys get a chance to check that out. But I think this is definitely a big part of the conversation we're trying to do in regards to our people in our communities and our total communities, you know, and our challenges and what we need to do to kind of elevate from there.
Awesome. Cassandra?
I just want to thank Lisa and Scott for putting me on this panel at the very last minute. I would like to thank Western Front founders, Marvin Gilmore, Dennis Benzan, and Tim Flaherty for giving me this opportunity and having faith for me and seeing my transferable skills as a veteran entering this industry as a newcomer. And it's my responsibility and to turn around and do the same. How can I use my platform to help my own community in Chelsea and other people who deserve a second chance and who deserve to be rich in cannabis, honestly. And I would one last time like to say that if you do support Black Lives Matter, please support Western Front. Western Front is the second minority-owned company dispensary that will open in Massachusetts. There are 130 applications for economic empowerment companies in the state, and only one has opened. And we are rushing to the finish line, trying to open as soon as possible. And I encourage you to come and check us out. It's westernfrontus.com, and on Instagram and Facebook, it's Western Front Chelsea. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. So I just want to thank all of the members of this panel, Malik, Devin, Jennifer, Blake, and Cassandra. You are the bomb.com. I think one of the critical components of being in the cannabis industry is collaboration. Look these folks up. Plug in with them and collabo. Don't blow up relationships, because this is a really small world when it comes to cannabis. So it's all about addition and not about subtraction. We had to call out earlier with Cassandra saying that we want everybody to hire, and all folk who are in this industry should be looking to break the chains of systemic racism and hiring affirmatively in their place of business. In addition, invest in companies that are present. Each one of the small businesses that are present, I'm sure, have investment opportunities, and that's another way to connect with folks. Shop at these locations. One of the other ways that we can let folks know, if you're not on board with us, we're not bringing our money to your shop. So go see Cassandra, go see Kobe and Kevin and those folks, and Jennifer. I can't wait, and Blake. I don't even know if I'm messing with your stuff because Devin is on. Devin likes to do. Okay, we won't go there. all of that said, the last piece I did want to give a plug to is Tashonda Vincent Lee on Friday. She's my former campaign manager, one of the people who ushered me into this space, is hosting a National Expungement Week event. Make sure that you stay tuned for that. And each of you has an opportunity in your neighborhood, in your community, in your state to make a difference. Your voice matters. And if you don't think it matters, look at what my man Devin. He still has that under 30. He's still skinny. The under 30 skinniness, brother. He ain't put on yet. But when it comes down to it, change state law with a group of his friends and comrades. I also want to close out by saying huge shout out Scott, Lisa, Kara, and Boston Cannabis Week. From day one, y'all hit me up last year. I think y'all might have stopped the brother. I got a little nervous. No, I'm just kidding. But y'all were making sure that people were included, that you were deliberate in making sure that Black folk, Latinx folks, LGBTQ folks, as well as veterans were involved in this. And that you using your stage, and also just keep it 100, you using your privilege to open the doors of opportunity for people of color is exactly what we need to see. And I just leave you with what one of my mentees, Monica Cannon Grant, likes to say. She says, I don't need any more allies. I need an accomplice. Because remember, when you have an accomplice, we got Blake here. Allies, they don't go to jail with you. When you got an accomplice, they got to get locked up with you. So when it comes down to it, having people like Boston Cannabis Week who are accomplices and making sure that we tear down what's happening in our state. Lastly, we need legislation to expunge every single record in the state of Massachusetts for anybody who has anything related to cannabis. Rip that Band-Aid off right now and open the doors of opportunity for them to get into the industry. I'm going to pass it back to Scott Lee.
That was absolutely incredible. I am happy and honored that we were able to host all of you tonight. This was quite a powerful and impactful conversation, and Scott and I launched Boston Cannabis Week with the intent of providing that platform, and we promise as Boston Cannabis Week to continue to have these conversations and to provide platforms for them. And we're honored that we just are able to hear each of your stories and your sharing with us, and we're all making steps towards a better world, right? Because at the end of the day, that's really what's the most important here. We couldn't do this without Kara. She's amazing. Elevate Northeast. They're a very strong partner in our education, and we're so happy to be working with them. And I will throw it over to my partner, Scott, in Boston Cannabis Week, my co-founder, my co-conspirator, and he's going to tell you what we have lined up for the rest of the week. Thank you for your support, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for an absolutely amazing panel. We can't appreciate you guys enough. Before I get into what's next, I just want to peel back for a minute to the documentary that Malik had mentioned earlier, This Ain't Normal. If you haven't seen it yet, go and check it out. It's one of the most powerful pieces I've ever seen. And it will really, I honestly believe every dispensary owner should be made to sit down and watch this piece, because it really gives a great insight to where a lot of this improprieties start and where people really come from. So please go and check that out. Malik does an amazing job with that. Tomorrow, we have kind of a different panel. We're going to be talking about the change in cannabis marketing post-COVID now. How are people dealing with in-person and without meetings? We're all on these Zoom calls now, and we've all living in this virtual world. We have a great lineup tomorrow. We have Holly Alberti from Berkshire Roots will be moderating that panel for us. Laura Baina from Healing Rose. We all love Laura. She's one of the great entrepreneurs in this community. Chanel Lindsay, who we all know. Sohan Shen from MCR Labs, and Audrey Shields from PAX will be joining us as well. So we have a great lineup tomorrow. That'll be from 6 to 7. And then also 4 o'clock tomorrow, going back to this virtual thing, one of the most fun things we did last year was our business mixer. It was one of the most well-attended, and I think a lot of people are missing that networking piece. I know I am. I'm a very personable person. I love meeting new people. And we've partnered with NISCO Corp tomorrow to actually do an online networking event. That is going to be at 4 p.m. You can register at bostoncannabisweek.com. It's an icebreaker type thing. It's going to be sponsored by Boston Center of Excellence and UMass Dartmouth. So go and register at bostoncannabisweek.com and join us tomorrow at 4 p.m. for that. And thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. Tito, thank you for an amazing job. Malik, Cassandra, Devin, Blake, Jennifer, you all did an amazing job. And I, one last time, just have to say thank you so much to Kara for the amazing job she does with our education. We couldn't do what we do without her hard work. So thank you, Kara.
Love you guys.
Yes. And thank you
guys
to all our
for
sponsors.
participating. It's all because you answered your emails.
And I have to just say one last time, we have the best sponsors in the world. So I'm very grateful for their support, especially MCR Labs, Berkshire Roots, Western Front really jumped in to support us this year. And it's amazing, and we're completely grateful. So thank you.
One last piece. Cassandra, when are you guys opening?
You know the CCC, we can't say when we're open.
Oh, I forgot. I forgot. Okay, I'm sorry. So Cassandra had that. Okay. No, I got you. So soon, go ahead and check out
Western Front Chelsea on Instagram and Facebook, westernfrontus.com. You can sign up for updates, and we will let you know as soon as we are allowed to open. Thank you so much for your support.
Awesome.
I'm going to go get high.
Hope you come. Happy Boston Cannabis Week.
Happy Boston Cannabis Week.
Thank
Make sure you vote, everybody.
Vote.
Vote.